Hello friends, my name is Sagar Morea and today in this video we are going to see HTML versus XHTML. So let's start. As you can see on my screen, there is a difference given. The basis of comparison column is there and we have HTML versus XHTML column. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, whereas XHTML stands for Extensible Hypertext Markup Language. I will come to the point where extensible meaning I will explain. That is nothing but the XML, which is XML means Extensible Markup Language. And HTML was developed in 1987 by Tim Berners-Lee, and around that only he published internet as well. And XHTML is created in 2000 by World Wide Web Consortium, which is also known as W3C. So that organization governs HTML and CSS. Then file name extension for HTML is .htm or HTML, whereas for XHTML it is .xhtml, or it can be HTML or HTML or XHT or XML as well. Application, so it is a SGML application. I'm talking about HTML part. So and XHTML is a XML application, which is Extensible Markup Language. So what does SGML mean? It is Standard Generalized Markup Language. So it is a standard for markup language. Then the format type, the HTML uses format which one is similar to document formats, but the XHTML uses markup language format. The expressiveness we can compare with HTML and XHTML is like HTML is less expensive, but XHTML is more expressive. Okay, let's come to the screen and I will show you the code as well. As you can see on my screen, I have opened this chapter where HTML versus XHTML we are going to see today. So XHTML is more stricter and more XML based version of HTML. It is strict in nature. What is XHTML? Extensible Markup Language. Then it is stricter version. It is more XML based version. HTML defines XHTML means XHTML is HTML only, but it defines XML application. And XHTML is supported by all major browsers as well. Then why we should consider XHTML and not HTML, or why HTML or none, why not XML or XHTML, right? So let's understand that. So XML is a extensible markup language where all documents must be marked up correctly and well formatted, and that is a strict version of XHTML. So XML is the main thing, and out of that XML they have developed XHTML. So it was developed in such a way that it is more extensible and flexible to work with other data formats such as XML as well. But in addition to that, browser ignores error to HTML pages or of HTML pages. But here in XML, browser was not supposed to ignore the errors in 2000 when it was launched. Then at that time, it was strict enough to understand the XHTML syntax, and the developer has to write the syntax that way only, otherwise it will not work. So XHTML comes with a more stricter error handling. Okay, so if you want to study, you can just go to XML tutorial, but for now we are just comparing these two. So doc type is mandatory in most of the cases. So most important differences from HTML they are saying, right? So we declare doc type, and here it is mandatory, although some of them developers do not do it, but it is recommended. Then in XMLNS attribute, HTML is mandatory. So XMLNS is an attribute in HTML, and that is mandatory. Then HTML, head, title, body, these tags are also mandatory in XHTML. Here we all are seeing these for XHTML. Then elements must always be properly closed. That is also a condition in XHTML. Elements must always be closed. Elements should also closed for nested ones and for this one also. Then elements must be in lowercase. That is also a condition for XHTML. Then attribute names or the attribute values. Attribute name should be in lowercase and values should be enclosed in the quotes, and attribute minimization is forbidable. So if you understand all this, you should know that all the rules we follow as a best practice that were stricter in XHTML. So XHTML, as I said, doc type is mandatory, so we have to write doc type like this, and we have to provide the document type definition, which is DTD format, which represents what XML version you are following, and accordingly it will treat your code written here. And as I mentioned above, XMLNS attribute was supposed to be there in XHTML version. So this is the format of XHTML. If you use that, you have to follow all the rules and regulation which it has. So XML elements must be closed properly for nested elements. Means if you see here, this is the correct way of closing it, but if you close the I element, which is the child of B tag, right after the B element, that is not correct in XHTML. But if you want, you can still do that in HTML, right? Although that is not a good practice, I'm saying it is always a best practice to do something like this. Okay, XHTML elements must be always closed. Means if you see, this is the correct way of opening and closing paragraph, but if you do not close the paragraph and keep it like this, it is not a good way, and XHTML will not support that. Then XHTML empty elements must be always closed. As I said before, BR, HR, IMG or input tags are tags which are empty tags and which has to be closed by this /, and it is a good practice, and we should follow all this only, because in React also they follow this, and this is not a good way to keep the empty elements like that only, and that was a strict restriction for XHTML as well. So XHTML elements must be in lowercase, means you should not be writing this body or h1 paragraph or div or all these tags in a capital way. This is very wrong in XHTML. Then attribute names must be in lowercase, means href, src or whichever attributes you are using, it should be in lowercase. It should not be something like this. And all these tags and rules and attribute rules or whatever they are saying, we used to follow in today's world as well as a best practice, and our browser handles the error if we do anything bad in it. Let's say we capitalize it somewhere, so browser understands. But in 2000, when XHTML was launched, at that time it was a stricter version, so all developers had to follow this rule only or this syntax only, otherwise it would not work. Then this is the correct way of writing attribute value must be enclosed with the quotes, means it should be like this. For the value, double quote is there, it should not be something like this. And attribute minimization is forbidable. So what they mean by that is, this is the correct way of using disabled attribute, where disabled is a value also, and checked attribute is checked is a value also for that. But here if you see, checked only attribute without the value or disabled attribute without the value, you cannot use that in XHTML. You have to use this way if you are using XHTML. But nowadays if you are using HTML only, you can go with this also, that is a attribute minimization. Then you can validate your HTML here. Just click on this validate page. So validator.w3.org is the website where you can validate all your page name codes or your files also. So this is a website, and here we have given this address, and if we check that, it will validate and tell what all other errors are there. So there are no errors. Likewise, you can, if you want, you can just paste your source code as well here, right? And you can validate your HTML. Okay, so that was all about HTML and XHTML. I hope you like the video. If you do so, please click on like, and I hope we will meet again in the next video.